立法會
The President. We continue with the Mandatory Provident Fund Scheme Amendment Bill 2019. Mr. Ray Chan, I call for quorum call.
邝俊宇議員
Mr. Roy Kwong. President, we're here to debate on the Mandatory Provident Fund Schemes Amendment Bill 2019. This is the last council meeting in this session. We have to make good use of the time to state the disadvantages of the MPF fund. I say that it is a daylight robbery. You're forced to join. If you work, you will have to make contributions. You may make pittance, but they still take the shirt off you. On top of that, they lose your money. For the first 3 months, every employer, they lose about $37,000 on account. The entire system is fraught with faults. For the asset is $969 billion. However, the income made by investment companies stands at $14.1 billion. So these investment fund managers are the only ones to stand to benefit. There is a hefty administration fee. There is little investment return. They eat into your hard-earned money. It's been 20 years. It's been 20 years. The performance of MPF is appalling. Employers don't like it. Employees don't like it. Everyone finds it unpalatable because of the high administration fee. On average, it's as high as 1.41%. The highest one is about 3.38%. Mr. Roy Kwong, this is the Mandatory Provident Fund Schemes Amendment Bill 2019. It includes 2 things. Please focus. President, don't interrupt me. I have to lay the background first. They're here to talk about that centralized electronic platform. They say that it will save your administration fee, but it is a swindle. When we talk about the MPF, we have to lay everything out. Otherwise, people won't understand. They don't understand why we feel so strongly about it. As I said, basically, you pay most of your money to administration fees. So it's investment fund managers who benefit, and employees will suffer. We don't mind about the amendment. We most welcome any reduction in fees. But these are just small patchworks. I find it rather annoying. The entire system is rotten to the core. It's only a waste of time to try to patch it up. I think there should be a time for the government to abolish the entire MPF system and replace it with universal retirement protection to ensure that basic living expenses can be met after retirement. We talk about MPF, we talk about universal retirement scheme. You can only take one from the 2 options. The government has been trying to mend the MPF. They give you a centralized electronic platform. They allow you to access your information, and there is only very small reduction in administration fee. If you think that by patching up the MPF and it can serve its purpose, then it's only a dream. But in 2013, Professor Nelson Chow conducted a study, and he floated the idea of universal retirement scheme. He's put all the figures in place for you. Mr. Roy Kwong, let me remind you again, you are digressing. Okay. In short, for this MPF system, it is lamentable. This is only a band-aid solution. It doesn't address the fundamental flaws of the system. I was talking about 2 different systems, MPF system and the universal retirement scheme. You have to abolish the MPF system before you can implement the universal retirement protection. Now, Professor Nelson Chow has given you the calculations all the way to 2014. You engaged the professor, but you ignored his advice. Mr. Kwong, please come back to the point, otherwise I will have to stop you. We're not here to talk about the merit of the MPF scheme. Under this bill, it talks about centralizing the various platforms and group them into one electronic platform. And I just find that this is not a reasonable approach. The MPF has been criticized for its high administration fee. This is Band-Aid solution. I say that it only scratched the surface. What is the purpose of the MPF? If such patchwork solution can support the retirement expenses of the entire population, people won't say anything about it. We have to take a macro view. The Hong Kong SA government has been promoting the 3 pillars of retirement protection: private savings, CSSA, and the MPF. That's why they don't go ahead with the universal retirement protection. Now they introduced this bill. They want to add a centralized platform. And they said that the annual registration fee charged will hopefully reduce the administration fee. You can use the centralized platform to access your information. And these trustees will be charged with the annual registration fee so that the operation cost will not be shifted onto scheme members. But as I said, the scheme itself is rotten. We may agree with your amendment. Next year, there will be another amendment bill that will continue with this fragmented work. What is the purpose of the fund? To support your retirement life. And there was this horrible offsetting mechanism. They now say that if you allow us to set up this electronic platform, then we will work on abolishing the offsetting mechanism. Let me explain to you. Under the offsetting mechanism, employers can take their contribution from the MPF to offset severance pay or long service payment. The MPF was implemented in 2000. Altogether, $36.5 billion has been offset. Today, you talk to us about this electronic platform. We won't oppose to you, but what for? It's for nothing. The entire system is littered with faults and flaws. I put away my money, and the investment fund managers lose my money without having to be responsible for it. When you make money, you put some in your pocket, but if you lose our money, you go scot-free. And the government is too busy trying to patch up the system. But what about full protection of one's retirement life? I find this system distasteful because in every session there will be a couple of amendments. Whether it is a government bill or members' bill, we ask for it to be changed. But still, after all these changes, investment fund companies are the only one to benefit. If people can rest assured that the retirement life is protected, then it is not because of the MPF. People have worked all their life and make contributions to Hong Kong's development, but they suffer when they retire. Do you know about the figures in the past 18 years? What is the average amount in each MPF account? 180,000. It's ridiculous. When you reach the age of 65, you take 180,000 and you add it with your own savings. How long will it last you? I want to highlight how ludicrous it is These kind of amendments is annoying because it makes them think that they have been trying to improve people's retirement life, but that is not true. It's not a point of whether I'm digressing or not, because when it comes to the MPF, it's about public funds, it's about retirement protection. I have to show the public that as long as there is the MPF fund, as long as there are these amendments, you will not get universal retirement protection because these are used as excuses. Well, next time they may add a mobile app and it will perpetuate. We have been giving them money, giving money to the MPF authority. The CEO of the authority earns about $4 million, so about $300,000 a month. Employees make contributions. They don't want their money to be lost. What else have you been doing? Nothing. Previously, there was a debate here talking about administration fund, that it should be kept, but the motion was not passed. Time has lapsed. We see the flaws of the system. We now ask for a review in principle, not a band-aid solution. They refuse to admit that they have made a mistake in the policy. Mr. Kwong, this is not a debate on the merit or demerit of the MPF system, but on the bill. If you don't come back to the point, I'll have to stop you. Point of order. What is your point of order? I hope, President, you will hear it very clearly. In the past few minutes, Mr. Kwong was talking about the establishment of the platform under the bill, whether it will significantly improve. No, this is not a point of order. I only remind members to come back to the point. Mr. Kwong, please continue. But what he said was relevant. It's for me to decide whether it is relevant or not. I want to make it clear to you, it is not your time to speak and it is not a point of order. Please sit down. But it is relevant, and you rule that it is not relevant, so it is a point of order. I remind members to come back to the point. This is my ruling. Please sit down. Mr. Kwong, would you like to continue? Stay calm, President. I heard your reminder. It's good for you to remind me, but it's not if you decide to warn me. I think people who heard me would decide that I have not digressed. I was talking about the impact of the platform, how much improvement it will make, and how poor that system is. Well, I don't want to criticize you so early in the morning. I was talking about the annual patch-up work, the central platform, and the reduction of administration fee. They just take everyone for fools. They thought that they have done something. I speak for the people. Of course, I will make use of my time to talk about the disadvantage of the MPF system. You admit that administration fee is high. In 2012, Anna Wu, the chief executive of the authority, said that administration fee is high. And if they want to set a cap, then there will be strong opposition from the sector. That's why you have adopted this band-aid solution. They make a profit of $14.1 billion. They may say that it is not a huge profit. You may say your piece. You're entitled to. This is a debate. But what I'm talking about, this is hard-earned money of employees. The people working in the MPF authority make a lot of money. They have stopped from trying to launch the universal retirement protection by saying that there is the MPF and we have been improving it. The then CS4A, Carrie Lam, she asked Professor Nelson Chow to do the conduct and then turned around to criticize him for not being serious. He is a respectable scholar. He should not be criticized like that. Sorry, I have been so worked up. I was going to use my 15 minutes to talk about how poor that central platform is, but someone provoked me, and now I'm all worked up. Mr. Porter, it's a point of order. I fully agree with what Mr. Roy Kwong said, but he's been digressing. After repeated warning, he talked about the same point. He's very arrogant. He said that, he would not want to start criticizing the president because it's too early. I fully agree with what he said, but it's the wrong platform. I think the president should ask him to withdraw his remarks. Mr. Kwong, please continue. Well, it's interesting to have these cut scenes. It's still early in the morning, as I said. I have about a minute or so. In the next debate, a lot of people will have a lot of things to say. President, he's been interrupting me. Please make a ruling. President, please ask members not to yell at that from their seats. Never mind, I still have 1 minute. People will know. This is the resumption of the second reading debate. We talk about the merit and demerit of these provisions, and I will talk about the actual operation. I think these are just shenanigans and just little things they do trying to detract from the point. We ask for universal retirement protection without means test. And I said that we should go straight into universal retirement protection. Mr. Porter said he agreed with my points. We get worked up because it's been 20 years. It was set up in 2000. It has done nothing. You only look at your account to find that you've been losing money, but you have no choice. This is daylight robbery. In the next stage, I will continue to talk about the demerit of the scheme.
Mr. Chen Kin-fo, Mr. Lam Shak-ting. Call for quorum, please.
陳健波議員。
Mr. Chan Kim-paul. Thank you. President, having heard what Mr. Warwick Hong said, I wonder why Hong Kong is in our position today. The reason is that a lot of LegCo members are spreading wrong information or misleading information, and he challenged the president's decision to remind him to come back to the theme. I represent the insurance sector, so I must address some of those wrong views. So I'd like to rebuke some of those views. First of all, I have some figures to share. The average administrative fee is 1.44%, but for many funds, the fee is only 0.6 to 0.8%, and they perform relatively well. And there's a default investment strategy fund, and the administration fee is very low. And in 2013, I have said that the average rate of return was 4.8% after factoring in all the fees. So Mr. Roy Kwong was conveniently ignoring the facts, and still he was complaining. But unfortunately, a lot of people would believe in such views. I do think there are problems with the MPF regime, but you must think about the context. The context of MPF offsetting was that the government had to convince employers to adopt the MPF system. That's why they promised an offsetting mechanism. That's why the government is tackling the problem now. Mr. Chan Kim-paul, please come back to the topic. I speak in support of the second reading of the bill. The purpose of the bill is to provide a legal basis for establishing the eMPF platform, including setting up a wholly owned subsidiary under the MPFA to administer the schemes, and the trustees would have to pay ARFs. The original plan is to levy a 0.03% charge from the 1st of January this year, but with the epidemic and black-clad violence, there were concerns that the bill could not be passed within the current term. Fortunately, we are able to introduce the bill into LegCo. I hope members would not stand in the way of this bill, which is very important to all employees in Hong Kong. The idea of the eMPF platform is to provide a common integrated electronic platform to facilitate standardization, streamline, and automation of MPF scheme administration. There will be common standards to deal with the registration and transfer of schemes, as well as record keeping. And employers can also issue instructions through the platform. The insurance sector fully supports the setting up of the eMPF platform. Apart from providing convenient services to employers, the platform can also help lower the administration fees of MPF schemes. MPF schemes have been criticized for having high charges, but the fact is that members can opt for cheaper schemes, and the ordinance stipulates that according to the requirements, a lot of manpower is needed to deal with the schemes every month, including withdrawal of interest, etc. There are about 10 million MPF accounts across 28 MPF schemes, and there are about 30 million MPF administration transactions every year, and there are different standards and practices for different companies. You can imagine the substantial administration costs. We should be sensible. I urge Hong Kong people to be sensible and see beyond the surface. They should not be deceived by certain people. There are different standards and practices in different companies, and their costs are substantial. many of these processes are still conducted manually, and this is certainly not the way to go. According to the MPFA, the average administration fee is 1.44%. This is lower than the level in 2003, and I choose index funds as my MPF funds because the administration fees are lower at less than 1%. I hope LegCo should take this opportunity to educate the public so that they know how to better manage their finances instead of embroiling in meaningless debates. Some people are just trying to win votes, but I hope the public would not be deceived. The government indicated that the eMPF platform can lower the cost of compliance, and the scope for the lowering of fees would depend on the tendering results and the digital take-up rate of the platform. The sector believes that slashing administration costs is the most effective way to cut back on the administration fees. Eventually, whether the platform is successful would be up to the actual situation. The government expects that since some users might not know how to operate the electronic platform, paper-based processes are still inevitable in the beginning phase, so the government must offer incentives and simplify the electronic platform in order to improve the take-up rate. For SMEs and older employers, some of them still use checks. If they refuse to use the electronic platform, then they cannot cut back on costs, which would mean that administration fees cannot be reduced. This is something we certainly don't want to see. The sector is also concerned that certain processes might still be done manually, so the government should seek to standardize such processes. But the sector feels that all the issues should be resolved right now. So all the relevant processes should be managed in a centralized platform because this would help save costs. So this would help achieve standardization, and the system should also be incorporated into a digital platform. Earlier, LegCo has granted two funds amounting to $4 billion for the early development of the eMPF platform. So all the conditions are ready. With the passage of the bill, we can start implementing the eMPF platform so that employees can enjoy lower administration fees, and that would mean higher returns. I believe this is the objective of the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Kenneth Leung. First, we'd like to declare that I'm a member of the MPF Consultative Committee, a non-paid position. And for this MPF Scheme Amendment Bill 2019 involve amendments on three areas. A lot of colleagues can touch on that. Will it empower the EMFA to establish a wholly owned subsidiary, the eMPF platform company? The second amendment would to revise the amount of the annual registration fees payable for MPFA by approved trustee to the MPFA. In the past, the trustees would not need to pay ARF, and this amount and equal to the 0.03% of the net asset value of a registered Provident fund scheme. And also would prohibit the trustee from passing on the ARF to the scheme or the constituents fund or fund scheme members. So these are the major amendments. And President, allow me to spend 2 minutes I want to explain the role of MPF as the retirement protection pillar. As you may have heard of the 3 pillar or 5 pillars, most recently the World Bank or World Economic Forum have listed 5 pillars. And first, the mean tested CSSA or the working family allowance. The second pillar is something the government haven't done, are the universal retirement protection. Well, in UK, that's national insurance. You have to pay a certain percentage of your monthly income as a contribution. And the MPF belongs to the third pillar, the private retirement protection plan. It could be voluntary or mandatory. Well, this is a mandatory, a private. Well, as this is a private scheme, and third, private savings, and fifth, the labor policy, for example, extending the retirement age and allowing the retirees return to the workplace. Well, that's 5. No, it used to be 3 in the 90s. So with the MPF, doesn't mean that we can't offer universal retirement protection. I see that the 5 pillars could go hand in hand. So we better get this right. Well, you can still have MPF, but whether we should make it mandatory could be another thing. Now back to this amendment bill. Well, one major direction will be about set up an EMPF. However, this bill didn't say how you set up the EMPF, as simply adding 2 or 3 clauses to allow the MPFA to set up a wholly owned subsidiary. Looking at some numbers, we currently have 4.4 million MPF scheme members, and yet we have 10 million accounts scattered across 28 MPF schemes. That's a huge problem. A lot of them may have different employees where they each take on different MPF schemes. They may own 3 to 4 accounts each. Well, at the end of the day, can this EMPF platform to consolidate these individual accounts? Well, each year there are about 30 million MPF transactions, including the registration, collecting and disseminating contributions, and recovery of MPF payments, and all the transfer of accrued interest, and also the fund switches, and also vetting and the withdrawal of accrued benefits. The EMPF platform is to really merge different IT platforms into one to create a synergy. So that's the biggest goal. We're waiting for the MPF trustee level or at the MPF scheme members. After the MPF platform is launched, we may be able to, just like the way we perform electronic banking, let's say we can just transfer the amount in one fund into another service provider. Well, we're not sure that what will become of the end product. Well, whether for the trustee or the user, they could easily perform all the transactions. Instead, they need to wait for some time after filling out the form. Well, this centralized EMPF platform, and as mentioned back in 2017 policy address, and in June, the MPFA has set up a working group on the EMPF platform to steer the development. From what I know, there are 3 proposals have been discussed at the advisory committee or the MPFA. The various proposals, I hope that the secretary can let us know that out of 3 proposals, you decide to appoint the MPFA to own and operate this platform. I remember there's another proposal which you would appoint a company or 2 or 3 companies to operate this new platform, but finally the government decided that you should appoint the MPFA to run this. Thus, the MPFA will set up a wholly owned subsidiary, and according to government's timetable, the EMPF platform should start building and testing in 2022, and by the end of 2025, it will be fully operational. I'm not sure it would have the same fate of the other government mega projects that will get delayed. Let's find, so for example, West Kowloon. Well, the most classic example, it could be delayed for over a decade. And for your EMPF, after we acquire the funding, you're not able to launch by the end of 2025. I think the secretary to be held fully accountable. According to the MPF consultant projections, if the digital take-up rate within 5 years reached about 90%, I'm talking the digital take-up rate. That means when we entirely give up paper and switch to this platform. Well, for the small, medium, and micro enterprises, how do we encourage them to give up paper and switch to this e-platform? Well, assuming a 90% take-up rate, if you manage to achieve this for the next 2 decades, with very rough estimate, the money saved can be around $22.5 billion and $2.36 billion, $23.6 billion. So far, I don't even know what's the cost of building this EMPA platform. We haven't get to the final estimate. I hope the secretary can provide a more concrete amount down the road. Of course, you have obtained funding from the finance committee. However, I don't see that as really the final amount. Well, look at the savings. Of course, the savings would have to exceed the actual costs. So I will continue to follow up. Well, President, while this bill only consists of 12 pages, of course, this is not the bill on the MPI platform itself. Well, that's why this bill just enables a MPI to set up a company. I understand for the next step, well, drafting the operational details of the MPF is a major project. Will take over a year or even longer before that bill can be tabled, referred to Let's Go. Even though you claim that the subsidiary could get up and running, well, I hope that the secretary during the CSA stage, I want you to tell us the timetable for the next step of legislation. For example, when we start the soft consultation, and second, how long we take to draft the legislation, and after drafting, well, including the consultation with the sector, that when we will come up with a blue bill. Well, a lot of at stake here. I remember back in 1999, I was involved in setting up some EMPF schemes. I see that the whole MPFO and together with the regulations was very complicated and difficult to understand. Also, lack of flexibility besides being very prescriptive. Well, if you amend the MPF SO, I don't want to get it even more complicated because those working in compliance, whether working in the banks or the major companies or the legal or the accounting professionals, think that this amendment bill is very prescriptive. There's not much room to maneuver. What the MPFA interpretation of this bill is very strict. By the time of drafting, I hope that the language or the operating procedures would be simple and easy to understand. I hope that's the direction you will take on. But next, the approved trustees of the ARF payable. The MPFA for years have relied on the government's capital grant of $5 billion back in 1998. Well, this capital grant of $5 billion will be exhausted by around 2024 or 2025. In order to help the EMPFA to balance its books and sustainability, the government proposed to amend Cap 485C to mandate the approved trustee to pay the annual registration fee. Well, I suppose it's all overdue after 2 decades because the administrators or trustees have quite money. Well, I never really paid for it as it's set as 0% and amended to 0.03%. And after the amendment, the MPFA will have about $286 million in income. Well, you're really charging the ARF based on the net asset value. Well, due to the international geopolitical or economic landscape are really sharply declining. Well, this overall 3% may become a much higher percentage. What we're going to do? The attempt that are we not set at 0.03%, or you have to come another amendment bill and set at 0.05%. Well, by charging ARF based on the NAV, it would be one way. Well, if all your NAV dropped all of a sudden, what are we going to do? Of course, the government have all this new clause 22C in prohibiting the trustees from passing on the ARF the scheme or the scheme members. As well, how do we enforce it? Because a trustee can come up with a lot of creative charges. They wouldn't call it registration fee. They could just call it something else to recover this cost. I want to know, how do you make sure that the trustee will not pass on the ARF on the users? President, I so submit.
讓我喬耀。
Mr. Alvin Yeung.
讓我喬爾。
Mr. Alvin Young. Mr. Alvin Young. Thank you. It's been 20 years since the MPF was put in place. As the administration described this amendment, it is an important reform. There are two parts. First, for the authority to set up a wholly owned subsidiary to operate the eMPF platform. Secondly, the annual registration fee to be paid by approved trustees is going to be set at 0.03% of their net asset value. So for every $10,000 worth in asset, they will have to pay $3. According to the government, the establishment of the electronic platform is to facilitate easy management by scheme members. In the long run, it can reduce administration fee, and then further along the line, the management fees of MPF will be further reduced. For the registration fees, it is a way for the MPFA to operate in the long run without any help. Back in 1998, the government provided $5 billion as a capital grant. Over 20 years, the MPF authority invested the $5 billion, hoping to use the investment return to maintain its operation. Under 22B, Section 22B, it says that approved trustees will have to pay annual registration fee to the authority. At that time, the administration was very generous. They said that, the authority was very generous, and they said that they have money. They won't need to charge anything. However, in 2025, the grant is going to deplete. All of a sudden, they woke up to the fact that there is this Section 22B that they can charge fees. For the annual operation fees is about $460 million. So the fee is set. Well, it is proposed that a 0.05% of net asset value is to be set in order for it to recover cost full. However, under the proposal, only 0.03% is charged, so it falls short of meeting the annual operation. After 6 years, if the amount charged is insufficient, does it mean that they have to come to the LegCo with another amendment saying that they want to raise the percentage? It will have to go through a lot of procedure just to achieve the same thing. They all cost money. Why did they not take this chance to set the percentage at the right level so that the MPF authority can operate in a healthy manner? Well, it reminds me of the anti-epidemic approach. They only stop dining during after 6 o'clock. Can they do it like they are working, like they were working on the national security law and give it their fullest? For the 0.03%, I think it shows us the core problem of the entire system. The authority has to move from IFC to Kwai Chung. It's a case in point. The authority thought that they could live on the investment return of the $5 billion. That fell through. Now they have to charge annual registration fee. You may say that the market is volatile. No one knows whether you can make a profit from investment or not. It's exactly because of that we think that the authority should not lose money. They have issued some statements in the blog on the 7th of June. They said that in the second half of 2020, the authority will move forward with the policy objective by having newer products and to provide a better option for employees and to add value to the retirement asset of employees. The policy objective of the authority is to add value to the asset of employees, but they can't do the same to their own investment. They even have lost money. Don't you find that ridiculous? Of course, people will not be too confident about what they do. Anyway, Hong Kong people have never had any confidence about the MPF. What is the result? If people have lost complete confidence of the MPF, that means they won't care about the money sitting in their account. When they are 65, they will only then realize that they don't have enough to last for their retirement. The authority itself should set an example themselves. They have to be cautious when making an investment. If they are not good at investing, then they should charge sufficient annual registration fee to pay for their operation. That's simple. There is a penalty under the proposal. They said that if approved trustees shift the fees to scheme members, they will face a penalty of about 10% of the fees or an amount. I think if I were an approved trustee, then it's very easy to resolve that. We don't have to specifically tell scheme members that they are being charged the annual registration fee. They can dress it up under a different name. They said, well, the administration said that the setting up of the eMPF platform may drive administration fee. But in the same breath, they have given a loophole for approved trustees to shift the annual registration fee to scheme members. How can you account to millions of employees that you force to join the MPF? Back to the eMPF platform. It's a good thing to have a centralized electronic platform to deal with all your affairs. I'm sure that all MPF account holders would welcome that. However, Hong Kong people know that it's very difficult to manage your accounts. For some schemes, you will have to get a hard copy form, or you have to approach the approved trustee to do anything. Of course, if you can now round the clock handle your own affairs, that would be a good thing. But they have waited for 20 years. Anyway, it's better late than never. The MPF authority reckoned that they would be able to save, in terms of administrative costs, $1.1 billion a year. They save it for approved trustees. They used a lot of money to set up this eMPF platform to help trustees save money. But how will employees benefit from that? We have expressed our concern. The administration replied that they believe that if approved trustees have saved money elsewhere, they would be willing to drive down administration fees. At the same time, I think they don't understand investment companies. Since 2012, with the semi-portability, indeed, the administration fees has dropped from 1.75% on average to 1.5%. That is a result of competition amongst approved trustees. But there is only a reduction of 0.25% over 7 years. That's too little. Approved trustees have no incentive to plow back the money they've saved to scheme members. If that doesn't work, when the government come back to the LegCo, they will have to tell us how much scheme members, how much trustees have saved, and how much the government has put that amount from that amount to the pockets of Hong Kong people. In any event, I don't think that any amendment will do the job. It won't make Hong Kong people fall in love with the MPF. Let me give you an example. It is a reform in the Song dynasty. It's a sapling tax. If there is no harvest, they don't have to pay tax. But if there is a harvest, then they pay some to the government. It's similar to the MPF, where there is no income. The public would be able to get a loan. But implementation is a different matter. District level government would force everyone to take out a loan so that they will benefit. They don't charge the stated interest rate. They charge much higher than that. So that reform fell through after a very short time. The MPF has been in place for 20 years. They have never been welcomed. Unlike other countries, in Hong Kong, you have to make a contribution of 5% of your income. Employers will have to pay the same. Employers think that it is too much. Employees think that that is not enough. In order to garner support from employers, that they put in place the offsetting mechanism. These are the reasons why Hong Kong people don't like the MPF. Whether it's people in the Song dynasty or now in the 21st century, no one knows. No one loves or like anything that is being shoved down your throat. Hong Kong people are very wise. They prefer to have the money in their own hands for them to decide how to use it. We don't want improvement in the MPF. We want it to be replaced by universal retirement protection so that there will be a genuine retirement protection. Under the national security law, Hong Kong people, most of them, don't worry about retirement. When you can't have your freedom guarantee, they can forget about the retirement. I so submit and oppose to the bill.
Mr. Holden Chow. Mr. Wu Chi-wai requests a call for quorum.
法定人數已夠，會議
We now have a quorum. The council now resumes. Even though members can discuss the context of the MPF regime, they should refrain from going into details because the bill is not about the benefits and drawbacks of the MPF regime, and rather it only targets certain arrangements. Ms. Odenchow, the objective of the bill is to set up a centralized platform in order to consolidate administrative processes for MPF trustees and members. The idea is to standardize and streamline the administration processes with the goal of reducing the administrative costs. That way, the administration fees for the trustees can come down. I certainly support the proposal. If the public has always expected the government to carry out measures in order to lower the administration fees of MPF schemes. However, I must point out that the bill empowers the establishment of an eMPF platform. The MPFA would set up a wholly owned subsidiary to operate this centralized platform. But as for the details of how the platform will be operated, they are still being ironed out at the moment. Once further information is available on the details or operation of the eMPF platform, the MPFA should brief the public. After the bill is passed and a wholly owned subsidiary is set up, KPIs should be established so in terms of the changes in the administration fees of MPF schemes, the public can learn about any changes or updates. I think a main incentive behind establishing this platform is to lower the administration fees. For trust units, the administration fees are typically high or excessive. So I hope that over the course of your work, you can provide KPIs in order to illustrate changes in fees charged by different MPF trustees. Under the bill, the MPFA would require MPF trustees to pay an annual registration fee which is set at 0.03% of the net asset value. Charging an ARF for the sake of operating the MPF regimes is certainly understandable, but our concern is that this annual registration fee might be transferred to scheme members. The bill stipulates that MPF trustees cannot pass on such fee to the public or scheme members. Contraventions would be subject to a fine, but I would point out that the level of fine is inadequate. Trustees who pass on the ARF in any way to scheme members or the public, they would be handed a fine of $5,000 or 10% of the charge levied. I believe most people would find the $5,000 fine too light. So in terms of the actual enforcement, would you step up the penalties or do a better job in enforcement? Would you exercise relevant powers in handing out other penalties to the relevant MPF trustees? Apparently, 0.03% of the of the NAV is not a big sum, but when we talk about big MPF trustees, 0.03% of the NAV might still represent a substantial sum. If anyone attempts to dodge your requirements and look to pass on the fees to the public or scheme members, it would be unfair to them. So in terms of enforcement and oversight, you must certainly do a proper job. Like many members have pointed out, you must ensure that MPF trustees will continue to substantially lower their administration fees. Many members have criticized this aspect for a long time. The administration fees have been excessive, and we certainly don't want to see the MPF account values of the public eroded. Thank you.
Wang Ting Kwang.